Smoky Mountains are older than bones, literally. They're estimated to be between 300 and 400 million years old. They're older than the Rockies, the Alps, the Himalayas. They formed before the forming of the Atlantic Ocean. It's likely that at one point they were as tall as the Himalayas are today, but over billions of years, erosion wore them down into the rolling valleys and peaks that they're known for today. And that's why it's not surprising that there's so much lore and spooky stories that come out of the Appalachia region. In fact, I get so many stories from this region that I could probably do an entire mini-series just focusing on stories from Appalachia, but we'll just focus on this one today. This came from Holly, and she said that in June of 2024, she was having some problems with her partner. She's from North Carolina and wanted to get away, so she figured she'd take a quick weekend trip to a cabin in the Smokies, and she had been there before on weekend trips with friends, but never alone. But being familiar with the area, she wasn't nervous, and she found a booking on booking.com. For a nice little studio cabin, and it had a hot tub on the porch. It had a nice overlook of the mountains around it. Pretty much everything she was looking for. She said it was about $600 from her stay from Friday to Sunday, and she was eager to get going when Friday came around. So she already had a bag packed. After she left work on Friday, she headed straight for the mountains. The ride from the cabin from her house was about 2.5 hours, and she said she enjoyed the drive. She was excited. She actually didn't even tell her husband she was going because they weren't on speaking terms anyway, and she was just really looking forward to this time to have to herself. And so she gets to the cabin. There were some other cabins along the route up to where this cabin was, but it was secluded where it stood. And she said she checked in, she dropped her bags, and then she headed to a grocery store because she didn't intend to leave for the entire weekend. And the first night she was there was amazing. She said she cooked her favorite dinner, ate alone, took a bath, sat in the hot tub, drank some wine, watched TV, and eventually fell asleep. Next morning was an early start, but she woke up kind of sad. She said she cried and then just got along with her day. She decided to go downtown to all the little shops in Pigeon Forge, some lunch, and headed back to the cabin. And the day was kind of going along without a hitch. She was having another nice day by herself, and around 11 p.m. everything started to change. She said she was out on the front porch, sitting on the porch swing, and the woods were quiet, but she grew up in the woods. She's not afraid of them. She knows that you need to respect nature. She was just kind of sitting out there alone, thinking, when she heard a loud click, 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 and she noticed all the lights in the cabin went out. So she jumped up from her porch swing, ran inside, and tried to use her phone light to see. Slammed the door closed behind her and locked the deadbolt. She said this cabin had 2 points of entry, the front door and the back. One had the deadbolt, and the other had a keypad entry on the outside with an automatic locking mechanism. She tried not to panic, and she said she still had phone service, so she immediately got online and started looking up power outages in the area. And she had noticed when she checked into the cabin that the breaker box was on the outside of the house in view of the road, which she didn't like, but it wasn't a deal breaker when she was checking in. She couldn't find any information related to power outages in the area, so she just decided to sit in the living room for a little while. She did have a weapon on her, in case anybody is curious, but she said she was just waiting for a little while to see if the power would come back. But after a little while, it didn't. She just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go to bed. Hopefully the power will be back on in the morning. She's laying in bed, dozing off, when she hears footsteps on the wooden porch outside. And she said at this point, she sat up in bed and she was trying to convince herself that her mind was just playing tricks on her. But the footsteps outside seemed to be walking around the perimeter of the cabin, and they were actually making the stove inside the kitchen rattle. It sounded distinctly human, like 2 feet were walking, too small to be a bear or another large animal. She was still sitting in the silence, trying to convince herself that she was just hearing things, when she heard the front doorknob jiggle. The cabin was pitch black. She couldn't see anything except for what her phone light illuminated. But once she heard the doorknob jiggle, she ran to the kitchen and grabbed a large butcher knife out of one of the kitchen drawers. She turned her phone light off and went to the front window to look outside and see if she could see any movement or anybody out there, but all it was darkness. And as she's standing at the window, she hears the doorknob jiggle again. And at that point, she said she freaked out. She grabbed a dresser and moved it in front of the door. Went back into the kitchen. She was panicking, but she did see a phone number on the side of the refrigerator, which had the maid and the maintenance person's number. She tried the maintenance person first, thinking maybe he's here, maybe he's trying to restore the power, but he didn't answer. So then she calls the maid, and the maid actually answers and informs her that she actually owns the cabin. She says, I don't know anything about a power outage in the area. And Holly's like, well, is the maintenance person maybe here trying to restore the power? And there's a pause, and the owner ends up telling her, no, the maintenance person's my boyfriend. He lives about 20 minutes away. He's not there. And Holly says, well, there's someone outside the cabin trying to get in. And at that point, the owner tells her, you need to call the police and I'm on my way. Holly hangs up and she immediately dials the police. She's standing in the kitchen, and as she's on the phone with the woman who answered the police line, she can hear movement on the other side of the kitchen wall. So she runs into the bathroom and locks herself inside. She said there were no windows inside the bathroom, so she was sitting alone in complete darkness with only the illumination from her phone. The person on the other end of the police line ends up telling her, oh, a tree fell in the area. That's why there's a power outage. We'll send someone out. And Holly starts convincing herself, okay, it's just in your mind. As she's sitting in the bathroom, she continues hearing the footsteps outside on the porch. Eventually, though, after about 15 minutes pass, she starts hearing the police sirens in the distance, and she starts feeling a little bit of relief. And she can hear the police get out of the car and start walking around. them outside, Holly feels safe enough to leave, and she goes outside to greet the police officer, and that's when the owner of the property also pulls up and they all start talking. They search the perimeter of the house but don't find anything. The police say, oh, it's okay that you called us, but it was probably just an animal. They leave, and that's when the owner of the property ends up telling her something unsettling. She says, my grandmother used to own this property, and there were all kinds of strange things that would happen when she was renting it out. Like one night, the entire front door got kicked in. They never found any sign of people in the area, and we don't know who did it, but it was distinctly kicked in at the bottom of the door. Our cleaner of the property had reportedly quit after complaining about footsteps outside of the cabin every time she was there cleaning the inside when guests had left. And the owner of the property felt so bad about this that she ended up paying for Holly to go and get a hotel that night. Holly says she's not really sure what to make of that night, but it was one of the most deeply unsettling and scariest nights of her life. And the other thing that stands out in her mind that she didn't really think about until later was when she checked into the property using the lockbox, she noticed that the code was already put into the door. One of those types of manual lock boxes where you slide the metal levers to make up a certain code in order for the lockbox to pop open and get the key. Apparently that was already on the code that she was supposed to use, but she didn't think anything of it. She thought maybe the cleaners had made a mistake, and she got the key out and entered the house. But she said she's heard enough scary stories about things in the woods, and she knows to respect certain things. And for some reason, this felt like more of a warning than anything else. It felt like she was somewhere that she just wasn't supposed to be. She's grateful that nothing worse happened. So who do you think was trying to get into her cabin?
Okay, straight up, this is my nightmare. Being alone in a cabin is a romantic idea until the lights go out. And notice the detail here. The click, click, click. That is not nature. That is deliberate. When she said the breaker box was visible from the road, that sent a chill down my spine. That implies surveillance. That implies someone was waiting. And the police? Look, I respect law enforcement, but it was probably an animal excuse when a doorknob is jiggling? Animals don't jiggle doorknobs, okay? Bears don't try to pick locks. The fact that the owner revealed after the fact that the door had been kicked in before, that is information you need to put on the Airbnb listing. Cozy studio, hot tub, history of violent break-ins. This girl trusted her gut by putting the dresser in front of the door, and honestly, that might have saved her life. It's a reminder. If you feel unsafe, you probably are. Speaking of feeling unsafe in a place that's supposed to be your sanctuary, let's go to New Mexico, where the watcher wasn't outside, but already inside.
This is Nikki's submission for Spooky Scary Storytime about a creepy house she rented in New Mexico, and I think this is the first story we've had on Spooky Scary Storytime coming from New Mexico, which is surprising actually. But Nikki said it was 2017, she had just arrived in New Mexico to her first duty station, and she had to find a place to live. And so she ended up finding this single-wide trailer right off the highway near the base, but it was the only place that she could find that would allow her 2 pit bulls. And the guy that was renting the place was kind of a slumlord. Place was kind of a wreck. She said, picture the Courage the Cowardly doghouse, but the place was cheap and the price was right. And she was like, you know what? It's only about a half mile from the base. I'm good. On moving in, there was a ton of cleaning and painting that she had to do because the place was just a wreck. So one of the first things that she did after cleaning the entire thing from top to bottom was to paint the bedroom just to make the place feel a little bit more homey. Decided on a reddish copper color to paint the walls in the main bedroom, but noticed that there was this strange splatter pattern that would come through the paint no matter how many times she went over. After 3 or 4 coats, the splatter pattern on the wall did go away, but came back a few months later. I don't know if that was related or not, but maybe worth pointing out. Once Nikki got the place cleaned up and repainted, it started to feel more homey, and she was pretty comfortable being there. And the way that this place was set up was it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, and the main bedroom and bathroom were off of the living room next to the kitchen, and then off of the kitchen there was another hallway that led to 2 guest bedrooms and a guest bathroom. One of the guest bedrooms they were using for a place for guests to sleep, and the other one was for storage. Only thing off-putting about this place after she had it cleaned up and repainted was that she had this very unsettled feeling anytime she would pass by the guest bedroom. Sometimes she walked by it to use the guest bathroom because if you were in the kitchen, that was closer than going to the main bathroom off of her bedroom. She said she just felt watched, and because there was not usually someone staying with her, she had a desk in there. So when she first moved in, she used to study in that room, but she always had this strange feeling of someone peering in at her from the New Mexico desert outside the window. She would look out and there would be nobody out there, and she thought maybe it was just because it was just so dark outside, so she hung curtains, but it didn't really help that feeling. Time she was in there, she just felt this oppressive presence around her, and she couldn't concentrate. So eventually she just gave up studying in there and kept the door closed. She said that even keeping the door closed didn't really help her fear around this room, and she often ended up running past the door at full speed the way a little kid would when they think something is chasing them in the dark. Said she had only mentioned this feeling to her wife, who is normally very logical and doesn't believe in anything supernatural, and she was surprised when her wife agreed and said, yeah, I don't like that room either. It feels like something creepy's in there. But they had two really good friends, this couple named Maria and Forrest. And one night, Maria and Forrest were over. They were out back drinking by the bonfire, and they were having the conversation of like who was going to be the DD for the night. And that's when Nikki says, oh, it's okay. You guys can keep partying. You guys can just stay in our spare room. And Maria just looks at her and without batting an eye says, I'm not sleeping in there. It feels like someone's watching me in there. Months later, Forrest and Maria had spent the night after another bonfire when everybody was out back drinking. They had stayed up late, and Forrest and Maria had ended up sleeping on the couch. In the morning, Nikki goes out to make everybody breakfast and coffee, and Forrest is just acting a little strange, and she's like, what's up? Like, what's going on with you? You're acting weird. And Forrest is like, this is going to sound crazy. He's like, but when I was a little kid, I used to see this ghostly lady walking around my house, and I always just kind of played it off as like my imagination because I was a little kid. But last night, for the first time in 30 years, I saw her walking down your hallway. Nikki said when he said this, it sent shivers down her spine. He and her wife ended up staying in that house for 3 years, and she said that even though they would never say anything, anytime they had guests stay in that room, they would complain of feeling watched. But fast forward to the last 6 months of them living there, Maria and Forrest are staying over again, and they're sleeping on the couch, and it's like 6 in the morning, and Nikki's wife is shaking her, trying to wake her up, and Nikki rolls over, and she's confused, and she's like, what's going on? And her wife says, I think Forrest was just standing in the doorway watching us sleep. Bedroom door was cracked, and her wife said that she saw a man's silhouette standing in the doorway. So naturally, Nikki wakes up and she goes out in the living room and she's accusing Forrest of being a creep. He pops up from a dead sleep on the couch and he's confused and he's like, what are you talking about? And he's looking at her like she has 4 heads. About a month later, on a night that they had no friends staying over, Nikki's wife wakes her up again and she says, there's someone in the doorway watching us. They looked over at the door and they could see the tall silhouette of what seemed to be a man. It was dark, their eyes could have been playing tricks on them, and so they try to play this off. But after that night, Nikki's wife insists on sleeping with the door closed. That became routine. Every night when Nikki and her went to bed, they would make sure the door was closed and locked. Until one morning, right before they moved out, that they woke up and the door was cracked open. Nikki's wife was asking her frantically, are you sure you didn't wake up to open the door? Are you sure you didn't go use the guest bathroom? And Nikki's like, why would I use the guest bathroom? We have a bathroom in here. Shortly after that incident, they moved out, and after the last box was packed and they were on their way to their new place, that's when Nikki's wife told her something horrible. She told Nikki the reason that she had been so adamant about finding out if Nikki was the one who had opened the door was because the night they woke up to the door open was the night that she saw somebody open the door, come in, and stand over her while she was sleeping. Nikki said, honestly, I'm glad that she didn't tell me about it until after we moved out because I don't know how I would have handled that. I don't know if I would have been able to sleep in that house had she told me while we were still living in there. But it was so scary, so terrifying, so deeply unsettling to her wife that it took months after they moved out of the house for her wife to even talk to Nikki about what they thought it could have possibly been, and they still don't know. So, who do you think was peeking in their bedroom? The Hat Man, Shadow People, something else entirely? Are there legends in New Mexico that I need to know about? Let me know your thoughts, and if you have a story you think nobody else would believe, we would love to hear it.
New Mexico deserts are already liminal spaces, right? They feel like they exist between worlds. But this, the slumlord renting a place with a Courage the Cowardly Dog vibe? First red flag. But the paint splatter coming back? That is straight up horror movie logic. What gets me is the man in the doorway. This is such a common phenomenon. The shadow people, the Hat Man. But for 2 independent people, the wife and the friend Forrest, to see the exact same silhouette, that validates it for me. It's not sleep paralysis if everybody sees it. And the scariest part isn't the ghost, it's the silence between the couple. The wife didn't tell Nikki she saw a man stand over her until after they moved out. I get she was trying to protect her, but imagine sleeping there for months knowing that thing was watching you. That is true love, or true insanity. I don't know which. Sometimes the ghosts aren't paranormal. Sometimes they're just guys who promise you the world and then pull the rug out from under you.
Get ready with me while I break down my breakup and how I went from this to this and calling my ex my future husband to being single again. Initially, things were going very well, as most relationships do when they first start out. It was going so well, in fact, that I introduced him to my mom. I introduced him to a ton of my friends. To say the least, we were on track, okay? Things felt like they were going really, really well. It felt really good. About 3 months ago, I was invited to go on a branded trip. Initially, I invited my mom. This was before he and I were getting more serious. And my mom and I had come up with a great plan because we were already going to be in New York. We were going to see some people that we love and care about in the city. So I actually did a semester in New Jersey, and I have friends that now live in the city. And my producer from Love is Blind is going to be in town. So I started making plans for a second part of the trip, right? There would be the branded part that would be completely free. And then the second part of the trip where we go to New York City for like 2 nights, stay in a hotel, see friends. As things were getting more serious between he and I, my mom and I were talking on the phone once, and she was like, you know, Madison, I've been thinking about it, and I feel like this would be such a great experience for the two of you to do together. And it was so sweet of her. I mean, it was so gracious that she was like, you know, excited to see these people. She was excited to do the brand trip, but she was like, you know, I really feel like this might be more of like a romantic trip, so you guys should do it together. And I talked to him, and he was absolutely on board. I told him the whole itinerary. I told him about the branded part and the second part of the trip. I also explained that obviously airfare would be covered, and the first part of the trip is covered, but the second part of the trip is not covered. So we would just need to figure that out together. He was absolutely on board. He had 0 reservations. He was interested in doing it. I laid out exactly what the cost would be and kind of like what we were looking at, right? He was on board for it. A few weeks pass, and we're talking about what we're excited to do in the city. I'm telling him about the people that he's gonna meet. You know, we're planning a trip. So fast forward to 3 days prior to the trip, I get a phone call. It's him, and he's calling me to let me know that he has thought long and hard about it, and he can't do New York. He says, you know, I have these financial goals, and I thought I could swing it. I really can't. I don't think it's good for me to go to New York. Let me be extremely clear. I am not upset about the fact that his financial situation did not lend itself to the plan. What I'm upset about is the fact that I talked through the entire plan with him 3 weeks prior. We were both on board for what expenses were going to be had in New York. We talked about the whole thing, and now it's 3 days until the trip, and he's bailing on me. And mind you, this isn't the kind of thing that I can just reschedule. Like, I have a contract. I'm contracted to go for the branded part of the trip. I've also given my word to people in the city, my producer, my friends. We already started making plans, and now I don't know what to do. 3 days prior, I'm like totally going into panic mode. I'm calling my mom, I'm calling my friends, nobody's able to go. My mom had took extended time off during Christmas because she wasn't going on this trip, so she no longer had the PTO to come on this trip with me. And of course, none of my friends could either because it's 3 days until we're leaving. Not to mention the fact that my mom literally gave up her spot for him to come. So as you can imagine, I'm in a bit of a panic. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to call people. Obviously, nobody can come. I booked a non-transferable ticket because the person that I trusted gave me their word. I'm trying to problem solve the situation, and I have an idea. I'm like, okay, so if finances are an issue, how about this? You come to the first part of the trip, which is free to me and him. It's branded, right? So he doesn't even have to pay for his flight. Accommodations, food, everything is covered. So I was like, why don't you come to that part, and then when we come back, I'll drop you off at the airport, you can go home, and I'll go into the city and see my friends that I've already made plans with, that I've already committed to. And I take full responsibility for the fact that I was in a panic. So do I think that I was maybe communicating as efficiently as I could have? Probably not. Was I maybe a little bit frazzled and overwhelmed? Because I'm upset, like I'm angry, right? He completely blindsided me, pulled the rug out from under me, and now I'm having to try to like come up with the solution and clean up the mess that he created. So I bring that idea to him. He's like, no, if you go to the second part without me, I'm not going at all. Literally says to me, if you go to the second part without me, I'm not going at all. So at this point, this is not about finances. This feels manipulative and controlling. Like, I seriously don't get it. What's it to you if you come to the free part, I go on to the second part that was always part of the itinerary, that I've given my word to people, that I've made plans on, that you agreed to? Why would it matter if I go by myself? So honestly, I was backed into a corner. I had to call my friends in New York and tell them that we weren't coming. And I had to make up an excuse to cover for him because I felt embarrassed. And obviously I was still with this person In hindsight, I should have just maybe gone alone, but honestly, that's so sad because like this was a magical winter wonderland trip that my mom graciously gave up for us to experience together, and now my options are to either go by myself or acquiesce. And I even explained to him, I was like, this really like causes emotional distrust for me because you gave me your word. I trusted what you said when you told me that you were in, and I booked a non-transferable ticket based on your word. So that was that. We went on the branded part of the trip. I canceled the second part of the trip. I moved our flight back 3 days. While we were on the trip, I had a little sit down with him and I explained to him the emotional repercussions that this caused. I just explained to him how I was feeling a little bit emotional distrusting, how I felt like the dynamic had shifted. But we had a deep conversation and he told me, I understand. I'm going to really step up. Like when we come back to Denver, like I promise. My mom was really disappointed and hurt by it too because she was so excited to do the whole thing. She knew that he had agreed to doing the whole thing, and it just felt like my thing got kind of ruined. And something else that he said while we were in New York was like, he mentioned the fact that he feels like it's the Madison show and he feels like, we just do my stuff all the time. And I'm like, then invite me into your life. Like I have these events going on and I'm trying to integrate you into my life. I would happily do whatever you want to do as well. I want to be a part of your life, and that's a relationship. So he was like, you're right. Like I haven't really been inviting you to other things. Like I haven't really been stepping up. I hadn't even met any of his friends. So I left that conversation feeling pretty good. I was like, okay, I might be disappointed and let down, but that's a relationship, right? It ebbs and flows. So I trusted his word once again that he would step up. Fast forward a few weeks and the dynamic still feels off. It just feels like he's not really putting in a lot of effort. It feels like when we are doing things, it's because I'm planning them. It just didn't feel balanced. And at this point, there have been other things that he has committed to and then bailed on. So I'm starting to see a pattern. It kind of almost felt to me like because he had me for a certain amount of time, he was comfortable and I don't know, like it felt like he didn't need to put in as much effort anymore. So last Tuesday, I went over to his house and honestly, I was prepared to end it. Like I just felt like I was running on a hamster wheel. I kept saying the same things to him. I don't feel like there was any change being made. And so I went over to talk to him. I'm so sorry. Go to part 2.
Okay, ladies. Pause. We need to dissect this. This guy didn't just bail on a trip. He bailed on a commitment. And look at the manipulation tactic here. If you go to the second part without me, I'm not going at all. That is textbook control. He messed up his finances, which, fine, happens. But instead of owning it, he tried to make her feel guilty for continuing with her plans. He wanted her to be as miserable as he was. And the fact that she had to clean up his mess and lie to her friends? No, absolutely not. When she said she felt like she was on a hamster wheel, I felt that. That is the universal sign to get off. If you are begging a man to participate in your life, you are not in a relationship. You are in a hostage negotiation. She made the right call ending it. But what happens when you don't end it? What happens when the money is endless, but the emotional baggage is even heavier?
So the parents of the children I babysit tried to take me to the bedroom with them. As in with the parents. Like the parents were trying to sequester me for bedroom activities. Ménage à trois, if you will. I had been babysitting their kids one night a week for about 8 months at this point. So here's how it happened. So Wednesday nights were their date nights, and they always got home around 10:30-ish. But this particular night, the mom was texting me saying, we're actually going to be a little bit later. Is that okay with you? Do you have anything going on? Or should we rush home? And I was like, no. You guys stay out. You have fun. It's their date night. I want them to have fun. It's the parents' night out. So they get home around 12:30-ish. So they walk in the door and they're very visibly smashed. They're stumbling a little bit and they're giggling a ton. And I thought it was wholesome. I thought it was cute that they had a little bit too much fun on their date. So I asked them how it went. They said it was great. And then they said, actually, we talked about you a little bit at one point. And I'm like, oh, ha, 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 ha. What about me? And they look at each other and they giggle some more. And they're like, well, we just think like you're really cute and really pretty. And I'm like, and for some context, yeah, these parents are good-looking people, okay? Like, they're good-looking parents. So anyway, I just laugh it off. I'm like, oh, you guys are too cute. I'm so glad you had such a fun night. I'm going to head out now, get some rest, drink lots of water. I don't want you guys being hungover. Like, I'm just fooling with them, like playing around. I'm in college at this point. I'm a freshman in college. I'm 19 years old. More context. So at this point, I'm about to head out. The mom turns to dad and was like, we have to ask. Should we? We can't blow our one chance. Anyway, the dad then does the talking. And it had been the mom talking for the most part up until this point. The dad goes, listen, we can pretend we never had this conversation if you are not interested. You also never have to come back again if you are creeped out. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going there. Like, I had the tiniest idea after they called me pretty. I was like, huh, that is quite interesting that you talked about me at dinner. But I also, this is like span of 30 seconds, so I didn't have that much time to think. And I'm like, yeah, like, what's up? Like, because I don't know what else he could be saying, but maybe it was something else. Maybe they were going to ask me to, like, watch the kids overnight. I don't know. Anyway, homeboy says, would you like to come upstairs with us and just maybe take a shower and see where things go? The wife immediately butts back in and is like, if you're uncomfortable right now, you can literally just go home and never come back again. You don't have to come back next Wednesday or ever again. If you're uncomfortable and you don't want to see us again, I totally get it. And I'm like, no. You guys are totally fine. Don't worry. I'm running out of time, but part 2 is already up.
Whoa, there's a lot to unpack here. First off, the lifestyle, the private jets, the mansions, it's distracting. But strip it away and what do you see? A deeply traumatized woman trying to save a deeply traumatized man. The whole situation with Dana, the assistant, that is not an employee. That is a gatekeeper. She is gaslighting everyone to keep her control over Harley. But the pivotal moment here is the conversation on the bed, when she opens up about her past abuse, which is heartbreaking, by the way, and so brave of her to share. She's trying to bridge a gap with Harley. She's saying, I'm broken too, but I'm trying to heal. And Harley, he's stuck. He's stuck in that trauma loop she mentioned. He wants the comfort of the big spoon, he wants the safety, but he doesn't know how to function without the toxicity of people like Dana. It's a tragedy wrapped in designer clothes. Money can't buy you out of a trauma bond. While trauma bonds are complex, some boundaries are very simple, like don't hit on the teenager you hired to watch your kids.
All right, my angelic baby kittens, my ABKs, my beautiful besties, we are back with episode 30, my month with the billionaire. So this bitch Dana has just said that she believes that it is time that little old me goes home. And I'm like, what the hell? I literally look at her, I'm like, what are you talking about? Before I can even register and go off on her, I hear behind me, what the fuck? I turn around and it is my girl, baby Kristen, and she has clearly just rolled out of bed because she is in a super oversized t-shirt, some like boys boxers. Her hair is in a top knot, messy little bun. She's got like one eye open, and next to her is Cutie J's shirtless with a body that could be sculpted by the gods, and boxers that are so tight that I can see everything that God and Brazil has given to him. And I am like, God bless Brazil, because I don't know what the hell they're feeding y'all over there, but Giselle Bundchen, Gianna Lima, genetics in Brazil, clearly the universe or God or whoever created the creation spent a little more time over there. Because I was like, good for you. Okay, Kristen, good for you, girl. Good for you, girl. That's something I gotta take note and say congrats to later. But I'm like, we're all looking at each other. And Kristen's like, what the fuck did you just say to her? And Dana was like, this doesn't concern you, Kristen. And Kristen's like, the fuck it does. And I'm like, yeah, that's my like road bitch. Like, of course it concerns her. And Harley's like, Dana, relax, let's talk about this later. No need to get into that now. And she was like, no, Harley, I have been thinking about it, and I do believe that your hindrance in your recovery lately, you're spiraling, like you haven't had a meltdown in such a long time, and clearly this is the reason. So I believe that there need to be boundaries in place, and Miss Cat, is probably time for her to leave. I'm like, first of all, girl, you want to talk about boundaries? Let's talk about boundaries. You're the one that doesn't know about boundaries. I lose my shit, y'all. Your girl is a Sagittarius sun and a very Scorpio moon. So I have deep emotions and I have a very reactive attitude. So I was like, Dana, you do not want me to get into all the things that are wrong in your corner of boundaries and your professionalness, because you work for this man and you on the daily are crossing boundaries. I am dating this man, so I am out here doing exactly what I need to be doing. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And she was like, no, there are clear boundaries that are being crossed by you and the people in this house. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, Harley, I need to talk to you in private. And Kristen's like, no, like you don't need to talk to him in private. Like anything you can say it here. And everyone's just kind of standing around. And then we hear Gabby come out of her room and she's kind of like, good morning. And she's like, what in God's name did I just like walk into? Because it literally looks like that Spider-Man meme where it's like all the Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Like we're all just like, who's going to say something next, you know? And I'm like, no, Dana, say it. Like, what do you need to say? You can say it to me in front of him and you can just go ahead and tell all of us, tell the class what your problem is. Harry's like, Kat, no, it's okay. Like, I'll talk with Dana later. Like, you don't have to leave. You know, it's fine. Dana, like, I will talk to you later. And she looks at me and she just goes, Kat, I'm going to give you one more chance. Why don't you go ahead and talk to me in private and I'll give you the chance to leave your dignity. I'm like, what the hell is this bitch talking about? And then I realized, fuck, Chef Drew. And I was like, no, Dana, go ahead. Say what you're going to say. I'll own up to literally anything that I've done. Go ahead. How did I cross the boundary? And she goes, well, last night I looked out my window into the yard because you guys were being very loud and boisterous. Because as you know, my bedroom window faces the outside. And I saw Kat and Chef Drew making out. Y'all, Chef Drew, I could feel the panic rising off of his pores and the sweat starting to pour out. I didn't even have to look at him. And I felt his energy go like, God damn it. And his back was turned and he turned around and I was looking at Harley and Harley was looking at both of us and Harley just goes, what? Dana, come on. And I just go, no, Harley, I will tell you exactly what happened. And Dana's like, please go ahead. I said, if you must know, Harley, I was mad at you. And so I was out there and I got drunk and they had a pen and I didn't want to smoke like the full puff. And I always take shotguns when I do it off my friend because then that way it can be filtered through them and I'm not taking as big of a hit. And that's what happened. I completely take responsibility. I realized that it was inappropriate. I put Chef Drew in an awkward position like he didn't want to, and it's completely on me and I'm really sorry that I disrespected you in your house. I was actually going to tell you, but we absolutely did not make out, like literally at all. And Harley's like, what is a shotgun? And I was like, Kristen, come here. And Kristen walks over. I was like, it's literally like this. And Kristen goes, I go like this. And then I go to her and she pretends to blow the smoke in my mouth. I was like, that's literally it is. Like you just suck the air out of the person. And Harley's kind of sitting there looking and he looks over at Chef Drew and he's like, Chef, is that what's happened? And Chef Drew's looking at me and I'm like, brother, take the win. I'm taking the L for you. Play along. I'm looking at him like this. Like your job is on the line, sir. And he was like, yeah, that's what happened. And I'm sorry, Harley. Like we were just all having a good time. It truly meant nothing. Like, you know how much I love my fiance and I would never do anything just disrespectful to you. And Dana was like, no, I know what I saw and I saw y'all kissing. I'm like, no, you didn't. And Kristen's like, shut up. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what happened. And Kristen's like, Maria was there and Maria's over there, you know, rearranging flowers. Like, why are y'all bringing me into this? And Maria was like, yes, I was there. And Harley's like, all right, Maria, you're a third party bystander. And Maria was like, I don't know what I saw. And we're like, Maria! And she was like, I can tell you this though, they did not make out. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And he goes, but y'all basically kissed. And I was like, well, it was less of a kiss and more of like a Hoover thing. And Harley just goes, I need to go. I need to just take a shower and get ready and we need to go, Dana. I'm like, Harley, are you okay? And he goes, I need to go shower now. He just turns around and walks up the stairs. I'm looking at Kristen like, uh-oh. And Kristen's looking at me like, this does not look good. I'm looking at Dana like, I am going to pummel this woman. Dana turns and she's about to start walking to follow him. And I just get in front of her. And I was like, Dana, I don't think you want me to tell the class of all the inappropriateness that you have caused with Harley. And I also don't think that the people that you work for would probably also be happy with some of the things with Harley. And she just looks at me dead in the face, y'all. And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, don't worry, I fucking have your number, girl. She just like turns around and she walks over and Kristen walks up and Kristen's like, what the fuck? What a bitch. And I'm like, dude, I am like seeing red. I am so angry and I wanted to tackle her from the back and show her the rugby moves that I have learned from watching rugby players on YouTube, okay? Which, by the way, if you're ever in a bad mood, ladies and gays, great way to pass the time. I look at Chef Drew and I'm like, I'm sorry. And he's literally not even worried. He's just like, girl, it's fine. And he's just like, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, you're fine. And Kristen's like, okay, what do you want to do? I'm like, girl, I gotta go. I gotta like go to my hotel. I gotta do stuff. I have to go to some casting. What are you gonna do? And she was like, I gotta go to my parents' house and check in on them. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the hotel. I'm going to figure out what is going on and then we'll reconvene later. Because it seems like Harley is probably not going to talk. She's like, yeah, when he gets like this, he's not gonna want to talk. Just like give him time and I will try to scope out the scene. I'll try to catch him before he leaves and I'll text you and let you know what's going on. I'm like, okay, great. Gabby's just standing there still in her like cute little onesie that she slept in, just like, can I get some coffee? I get out of the Mansion of Madness, I hop in my little Audi, and I drive back to the Pendry. I do a workout there, I do my work, I go to my castings, and I'm just kind of like doing work on the computer and my phone, and I text with Kristen, and she says that she tried to catch Harley on his way out the door, and he literally was like, not now, Kristen, and ran out the door. And I'm like, I haven't heard from him all day, and she was like, yeah, neither have I. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna give him some time to cool down, and then if I haven't heard from him by like dinner, then I will text him. So I'm just kind of like around. I go meet up with some friends. I do some shopping. I run some errands. I come back to the hotel at the Pendry and I still haven't heard from him and it's about 6 p.m. And usually around 5 or 6 is when he would already be texting me before that about dinner and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call this man. I call him. He doesn't answer. I'm like, okay, so clearly he's mad or he's just busy. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it. But it doesn't really help that he spent the entire day with diabolical Dana and she's just been probably feeding in his ear like, bad idea, bad idea, bad idea, bad idea, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe I should call Carol, check in on Mr. Harley and see how things are going over there and see if maybe they've seen Harley. So I call Carol and she's like, hi, sweetie. I'm like, Carol, how's Mr. Harley doing today? And she was like, oh, he's pretty tired today actually because he had a massage this morning and his physical therapist came to take him out into the pool and do exercise with him. So usually gets really tired after that, but he's in a pretty good mood. And she was like, how are you doing? How's the things over the mansion? And I'm like, girl, I'm actually at the Pendry still. And she's like, oh, she's like, how are things with you and Harley? And I'm like, they're okay. I'm like, has he been over there? And she was like, no, not at all. I haven't even heard from him. I'm like, oh, okay. And she was like, but Mr. Harley was asking about you. So when do you think you can stop by again? I was like, probably in a couple days. Like, I'll let you know. She's like, okay, great. I'm texting with Kristen and some of my friends. And I'm like, look, if I'm not going to be with Harley, then I'm probably going to go meet up with some friends for dinner or whatever. And so I'm letting Kristen know that if she wants to come out with my friends, she can. And as I'm doing that, I get a call from old daddy Harley. I answer and I'm like, hey. And he's like, hey, are you at the hotel? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, great, I'm valeting my car and then I'm gonna be up. What's your room number? I'm like, wait, you're at the Pendry? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So I give him my room number and he's like, okay, I'll be up in a sec. I call Kristen and I'm like, girl, Harley's here. She's like, Harley's where? I'm like, at my hotel. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, girl. And she's like, ew, is he with Dana? I'm like, girl, I don't know. He just told me that he is valeting and that he's coming into the Pendry. She's like, okay. I'm like, I guess he wants to talk, so I'll let you know how it goes. Hopefully he doesn't murder me. And she was like, okay, well, keep me updated. I'm like, okay. I hear him knock on the door. I open the door and there's old daddy Harley and he looks like he has been running around all day. His hair's a little bit mussy and he is wearing his signature gray t-shirt, and this time he is wearing some blue jeans that I actually don't know what the brand is. I'm pretty sure they were like some vintage Levi's, and he was carrying a tan Sandro jacket and wearing some black Converse, and this time some white chrome hearts glasses. I'm like, oh, he's got another pair. He walks in and he's kind of looking around and he's like, oh, this place is nice. He's like, I haven't stayed here in a long time, but it looks like the rooms are still nice, right? Do you like it here? And I was like, yeah, I really do like it here. And he was like, better than my house? And I was like, not necessarily. He's like, okay. And he's just kind of looking around. I'm like, do you want to sit down on the bed and have a chat? And he was like, yeah, no, I'll just pull up a chair. I'm like, okay. So I sit on the bed and then he pulls up the chair that was in front of the desk and he just pulls it up to the bed. And he's just sitting, kind of resting on his knees, looking at me. And I'm like, talk to me, Harley, how are you feeling? And he was like, well, I punched a dent into the side of the BMW, so the BMW guy is gonna have to come tomorrow and fix that. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, hold on. You were so angry that you walked outside and you punched your car. And he was like, yep. I'm like, Harley, because I shotgunned with Chef Drew? And he was like, yeah, I told you when we first met that the one thing I had was that you could not disrespect me. And I was like, I understand, Harley. And look, I am deeply sorry for any disrespect or uncomfortability that I've caused you. I take responsibility for that. Now, this isn't an excuse, but I was just really mad about seeing you and Dana, and I was hurt and angry that you were acting like it wasn't a big deal, and I should have just talked to you about it. I shouldn't have gone down and reacted that way, and I'm really sorry. And he was like, see, that's the shit that my ex would do. I'm like, Harley, I'm not your ex. We're not even exclusive. We're not even like officially together, you know, we're just kind of in this weird dating limbo courting situation, and I'm really sorry if I made you feel disrespected. And he was like, that's all that happened with Schefter, you guys didn't kiss. I was like, no. And he was like, do you find him attractive? And I was like, do you really want me to answer that? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay. We all have eyes, we see the guy, obviously. And he was like, is that the type of man that you want? Like young and built and stuff like that? Like, is that what you're typically into? Or do you usually like older guys? I've never even asked you this. I'm like, I don't have a preference. I just am about connection and the guy. But I am really attracted to successful men, and usually they're older. So I do like men that have their shit together, because I have famously been in relationships in the past with men that I had to help build up into the better versions of themselves. And after my last relationship, I said I wasn't going to do that again. And so I was very attracted to meeting someone like you who's a provider and who can take care of me. And I'm just being honest. He was like, I don't understand what you want from me and what you see in me. I was like, I see that you're kind, I see that you're very generous, and I see that you are a man that is actively trying to better his life and himself. And I like the way you treat me, and I like the way you take care of me. And he was like, is it just the money? Is that just why? And I was like, let me ask you this, Harley. You would never date a woman that you are not physically attracted to, is that right? And he was like, correct. I said, well, how can men expect women to date a man that they're not financially attracted to? I wouldn't be here if I didn't like you as a person and if I wasn't attracted to you. And the way that you move through the world is very powerful and sexy to me. I'm attracted to men that are successful and powerful, and that's just what it is. And he was like, I get that. It's a great answer. And I was like, there is a lot of safety and provision in a man that provides, and I've grown up feeling unsafe a lot of my life. And I think you'll find that a lot of women feel that they want that. They want a provider, they want to feel safe, they want to feel taken care of, they want to feel like the princess. And he was like, I want to take care of you. And I was like, I know, and I feel that, and that's really attractive to me. And he was like, but you don't want to have the sums with me. I was like, Harley, I think that it is very important for you, not even just in your potential relationship or bond with me, that for you and your future in general, that it's important that you're able to develop a really healthy connection one-on-one with someone and have a healthy, intimate relationship with someone without outside forces or anyone, because you being able to be vulnerable with someone just one-on-one when it is just the two of you is really important. And I understand that it makes you feel nervous because it makes you not feel safe because of the way that you grew up, but I'm going to tell you about me so that you can understand where I'm coming from. And he was like, yeah, I would like to hear more about like your story. I was like, I grew up with a very, very conservative Christian mother who was born and raised in the Philippines, and she moved to America when she was 18 for a better life and to become a nurse. She met my dad at a party in Texas. My dad pursued her really, really heavily, and she did not want to have anything to do with him, but he wore her down, and she ended up being with him because she was naive and she didn't know any better, and they got married. Growing up, my dad was a cheater. He was a gambling addict, and we had money growing up from his side of the family because his family's very wealthy. But then when he started gambling and everything, and things started happening with my parents, and they got separated and divorced when I was young, he literally took all his money and disappeared and took my brother and I's trust funds with him. And so then we were struggling just on my mom's salary while she was still sending us to a very expensive private school. Before he left, growing up as a kid, as a young girl, as a small baby girl, baby cat, I suffered from physical, emotional, sexual abuse from him. And it took me many, many years, and it has taken me many, many years continuously to heal from it. It has hurt my intimate relationships with men a lot. And he was like, you were groomed too. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, how is it possible that you are the way that you are now? And I was like, a ton of therapy. And women are built like this. We survive, we are strong, and we do it because we have to. We don't really have a choice. The world hasn't given women a choice. And he just walked over, sat on the side of the bed with me, and he just took my face in his hands and he just leaned over and kissed me so gently, y'all. Like the most gentle, feathery kiss you've ever had. He was like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. He was like, I'm gonna need the last known address and full name of your father. And I'm like, I know that you have the means to do what you want to do, but trust me, that's my own journey. Don't worry. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, and I'm sorry what happened to you. Like, we both have similar traumas from when we were kids that we didn't deserve. Yours has manifested in a different way than mine. Mine manifested in a way where I didn't understand healthy love or relationships with men. I didn't understand the difference between pure and platonic love and sexual desire. And it made me misunderstand a lot of older relationships when I was young. And it made me do a lot of things that I regret and behave in ways that I regret. Now, I don't believe in regrets really, but there are things that I'm not proud of. And it took me many years to understand and to break that habit of emotional safety linked to sex and power dynamics, and unlearning a lot of behaviors and the way that I accept love that I still have to deal with today. But if I can, you can too. I promise you. And he was like, I'm older than you and I still haven't learned how to do that. And I was like, well, you're a man and you guys are a lot slower than us, but you definitely can learn it. However, you have a lot of outside forces and people in your life that are keeping you down and are feeding into this trauma response and this cycle that you have. And he was like, I have a therapist and all this stuff, you know, like people helping me. And I was like, how often does Dana offer to do this thing with you? Does she understand that that can't happen anymore? And does she understand how unprofessional that is? Like, if her company or the place that you brought her from found out, like, wouldn't they be absolutely just disgusted and horrified, and she would lose whatever license it is that she has? And he was like, oh yeah, nobody can know about that. I do need to start to distance myself from Dana in a lot of the ways where she can just take over professionally and not be so clawed into my life, but I don't know how to do it. And I was like, it's because you have an emotional attachment to her, because she has created this cycle of emotional manipulation with you by creating a trauma loop tied to what you're used to from when you were young, when it first happened. And he was like, what? I'm like, yeah, don't you see that? And he was like, no, she wouldn't do that to me. She's just trying to help me, and she just does it because she knows that it brings me comfort. I'm like, but that's not what you need, Harley. Like, you need someone that is going to help you break the cycle so that you can have healthy, intimate relationships with people. And he's like, hey, can you just hug me? And I was like, yeah, of course. I go to hug him and he's like, no, can you hug me from the back? I'm like, okay, you want me to big spoon you? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, clearly this is your comfort thing. So he lays down on the bed in our clothes over the sheets, and I'm just like big spooning this man. And sure enough, y'all, after maybe like 30 seconds of us snuggling, old Mr. Sniffles comes out and he just starts crying. And I just held him, and I just truly felt so sad for him, because I, on many levels, understand how it feels. And I could tell that he truly didn't understand what he needed to do to get out of this cycle. So yes, y'all, next episode. What happens next with my night with Harley? Do we go back to the Mansion of Madness? How do we deal with Dana? And does Harley's dad finally go to Vegas? And a couple other notes, y'all, because thank you for people that had alerted me in the comments of a couple things that I accidentally had a Freudian slip. But to be clear, Harley's mother died when he was 18. She got sick around 13 or 14, when he was 13 or 14. She died when he was 18. Dana has 4 kids. She was married twice. The first time she was married is when she had that accident with her first 2 kids when they were in the car. She got the DUI and the reckless endangerment of a child. And those 2 kids were taken away from her, and she had visitation rights with them, and they are now in their 20s. She got remarried to her current husband, who lives in Chicago, and she had 2 more kids with him, and those are her kids that are 14 and 16. And this husband she is currently separated with. So those are some pieces that I just wanted to clear up. And as always, if you guys have any other questions, you can always say them below in the comments, and I will try to clear up as much as I can and get laser focused on what it is you guys want to know. And then lastly, for anyone that has gone through similar situations as this, or even any essay situations or anything, my heart is so with you. And it is so difficult to go through something so terrible as a child. And I know that a lot of us are looking at the news and these files that are coming out and all these horrific things that we're seeing and that are happening to children. So please take care of yourself. And as someone that is a survivor of this, please message me. My DMs are always open for all of you guys. And if you have questions for me, I'm always open. I am happy to talk about anything that you guys want from me, my healing journey or anything, or if you need advice or you just need a virtual hug. I love you so much, and you are so much stronger than you know. I promise you. I love you, and I see you. Big hug, big kiss.
Yikes. Just absolute yikes. This is why I have trust issues. You're a 19-year-old freshman. You think these people are wholesome parents having a date night, and then boom, the "we talked about you" line, immediate nausea. This is predatory. I don't care how polite they were about it, saying you can leave if you're uncomfortable. They put her in a position where she has to reject her employers in their own home at 12:30 a.m. That is a power imbalance. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were hunting. And to the mom jumping in to soften the blow, you are not a girl's girl, lady. You are an accomplice. This is a reminder to everyone. Your job description does not include unicorn. If the vibes get weird, run. It's funny how we laugh off these creepy stories, but sometimes the red flags we ignore lead to places we can't come back from.
I could tell what was going to happen to this couple just by looking at this photo. It was the middle of summer in Aberdeen in 1978 when a body was found in a ground floor flat. It was a absolutely horrifying scene, a bloodbath. This young woman lay there with over 20 injuries to her head and face. This was no accident. Somebody had wanted her dead. She was Brenda Page, a ray of sunshine to everybody who knew her. She was only 32, but she was already so successful, incredibly intelligent. She actually had a PhD in genetics. It was while studying in Glasgow that she'd actually met her future husband, Christopher Harrison. And it didn't take long for the couple to make things official and tie the knot in 1972. But there was trouble in paradise. When Brenda chatted to her friends and family, she was like, I'm just not happy. She was like, I'm constantly treading on eggshells. I feel like he's volatile. He's never happy no matter what I do. And she started opening up more and more to her family and friends, and eventually confessed that he'd actually been physically violent to her. Her loved ones were super supportive. They did everything that you would want them to do. They really encouraged her to be on her own, leave him, get out of the relationship, do what's best for you. So after 4 years of hell in this volatile relationship, she decided to put herself first and she filed for divorce. But it wasn't easy. I mean, divorces are expensive, and it was incredibly difficult for Brenda to just start a new life. She was now having to pay for everything on her own. Even though she was a doctor, she was still struggling. So she decided to get a second job for a bit of extra cash as an escort. And her big sister was a bit worried, as you would be. She was like, I don't want you to be in any dangerous situations. But Brenda was like, don't be so old-fashioned. I actually found this job in the newspaper. Like, it's all above board. And she was finally able to be free and do nice things and go to nice places again. But when her body was found on the blood-soaked mattress, the community was devastated. Her poor neighbour, Dr. Douglas, who knew her really well, was actually asked to identify her body, and he was totally traumatized by the whole thing. He said, I was absolutely horrified, and it stayed with him for his entire life. Now, when police got there, they said that the killer must have got in by forcing a window open, and the really creepy part is that the killer may have actually lay in wait inside the apartment until she got home. This is honestly my absolute worst nightmare. So was it a random stranger who killed her, somebody she met via the escort agency, or the violent ex-husband? Well, infuriatingly, we wouldn't find out for over 30 years. Although the police did their best, they collected over 200 statements. They sent divers into the river to try and find maybe a discarded murder weapon somewhere. They put posters everywhere. Everything came to a dead end. Christopher the ex was originally questioned pretty early on, but there was barely any DNA technology back then, and he just denied everything. Till March 2020. And honestly, I don't know, maybe somebody's watching this that thinks that they've gotten away with a crime, but let me tell you, the clock is always ticking. It's only a matter of time before you get found out. Police announced a 79-year-old man had been arrested and 800 pieces of evidence had been collected. And who was that 79-year-old man, you ask? It was Christopher. At his trial, they revealed sickeningly that his liquid, if you know what I mean, was found at the crime scene, and a witness actually ended up testifying that Christopher had told them He had intentions to kill Brenda. Like, I feel like that's probably a piece of information that you should have come forward with a lot sooner. Handwritten letters were also found from Christopher to Brenda admitting that he was violent towards her and that she was scared of him, which totally contradicted everything he said in the trial about them having a perfect marriage. I guess one of the nails in the coffin for Christopher in terms of this evidence was that flakes of green paint were found at the crime scene that matched the paint inside Christopher's car. Finally, aged 82, he was found guilty and given life, but loads of people are arguing like that's actually too late. Do you guys think this is too late? Is it ever too late to get justice? Because I guess he has been free for like the best years of his life.
This story breaks my heart because Brenda Page did everything right. Did you hear that? She did everything right. She told her friends, she left him, she got a divorce, she tried to build a new life, and he still hunted her down. The green paint evidence and the letters hidden away, it's frustrating that it took 30 years for DNA to catch up with Christopher Harrison. He lived a full life, 82 years old, while Brenda stopped at 32. Is it justice? Technically, yes. But like the narrator asked, is it too late? He got to live free for the best years of his life. It's a stark, painful reminder that leaving a violent partner is statistically the most dangerous time in a relationship. We have to do better at believing victims the first time, not 30 years later, when the science finally catches up.
We've been on a journey today, haven't we? We started with the fear of the unknown in the Smoky Mountains and ended with the brutal reality of a crime in Aberdeen. And if there is one thread pulling all these disparate stories together, it is the concept of intuition versus gaslighting. Think about it. In the cabin, Holly heard a noise, and her brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's an animal. In the breakup story, Madison's boyfriend tried to make her feel crazy for wanting to stick to a plan. In the Billionaire saga, Dana is actively gaslighting Harley to keep him sick. And in Brenda's tragic case, her ex-husband spent decades playing the innocent, grieving man, gaslighting an entire community while he knew exactly what he did. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be polite. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. Maybe you're just imagining it. The parents in the babysitter story banked on that politeness to try and exploit a young girl. The slumlord in New Mexico banked on the cheap rent to keep tenants quiet about the haunted bedroom. But here is the hard truth I want you to take away. Your discomfort is information. If you feel like someone is watching you from the dark, lock the door. If you feel like your partner is financially controlling you, open a separate bank account. If you feel like your boss or your employers are crossing a line, leave. We often wait for proof. We want to see the ghost. We want to find the text messages. We want the DNA evidence before we allow ourselves to react. But as we saw with Brenda Page, waiting for proof can sometimes cost you everything. The women in these stories who survived, Holly in the cabin, the babysitter, Madison, the ex-girlfriend, they all had a moment where they chose their safety over being nice. They chose their reality over the narrative someone else was trying to force on them. So I'm asking you guys, have you ever had a moment where you ignored a red flag because you didn't want to seem crazy, only to realize later you were right all along? Or maybe you're the one who listened to that voice and dodged a bullet. Let me know in the comments. Let's validate each other's instincts down there. Stay safe, trust your gut, and I'll see you in the next one.